Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of Now SEC Talk. Yes, that is correct. I know our loyal fans that has been with us since 2016 remember the name, and we are back better than ever, baby, with SEC Talk with my co-host Wade Hamilton. We were together in the weekend. We went to the LSU Mississippi State game in Death Valley. It was a very fun game, and I'm definitely grateful for Wade inviting me. So, how are you doing?
SEC. um, yeah, I'm doing great. I'm glad that we got to take in that game this weekend together as well. It was a really hard fought battle by the LSU Tigers, pulling away from Mississippi State late in the game. So we'll cover that as well as the rest of the action from last week, and then take a look at this week as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Action packed week 3 and now week 4. So before we get into that, as always, the SEC teams in the AP top 25 poll. Not much movement as we saw last week. Still number 1, Georgia, number 2, Alabama. They stayed the same after they eased in week 3. Georgia played South Carolina, 48-7 win, and then Alabama won against Louisiana Monroe, 63-7. And then Kentucky, they stayed the same as well, and also staying the same as number 10, Arkansas. I thought that the AP poll would drop them just a slight bit because of the struggles in the first half against Missouri State, but the AP poll still has the Razorbacks as a top 10 team. Number 11 is Tennessee. They vaulted up a couple of spots after still being undefeated on the season. Number 16 is Ole Miss after their drubbing against Georgia Tech in Atlanta. And then number 20, Florida. They are still there, barely hanging on after their struggle win against South Florida. And then number 23, Texas A&M. They had a big win this past weekend against Miami. So those are we got a lot of teams in here. This is a lot of SEC teams in AP top 25 polls. Looks like the conference is looking strong once again in the 2022 season. So next, just a reminder for all of our fans tuning in to all of our platforms. If you have any questions, feel free to leave us a comment. We usually did the answering questions segment at the end. We'll still do that, but if there's comments popping up, we'll definitely show them on the screen here, and we'll definitely get right into it. So let's go on now to our SEC Fantasy, which is our first sponsor of the night, presented by Buffalo Bayou Brewing Company. It's right around Houston, there in Chetstown there. So if you're ever around H-Town, definitely go check them out. They definitely have some good beers, some good food as well. I've heard some really good things about their food. So our co-host Chet really loves that place, and so do we here on the Old City Sports Network. So definitely go check them out if you're in Houston, Texas. All right. As always, let's get into the rules. 1 quarterback, 1 running back, a receiver, and a defense. And then, as always, the Wade rule, we cannot pick the same player back-to-back weeks. So let's get right into the SEC Fantasy Week 3 recap. It looks like the Florida defense cost you.
Yep. Offensively, this team did very good. Hendon Hooker led the way with 298 yards. So he did everything I could ask for. Raheem Sanders, I got to say, he's probably the SEC Fantasy MVP this season so far. Another 150-plus yard effort. I think that's 3 in a row to start the season, going for 167 yards. Dre Jenkins didn't really have the yardage in this one. He had a couple of key catches on 3rd down, and he had a touchdown for the Tigers to get on the board, but just 23 yards. But the Florida defense, they let me down. They had 402 yards against them. You're not going to win too many of these matchups when you have a minus 402 in your total. But because of Hooker's effort, I was able to stay in the positives, ending up at 86 yards.
Hey, you probably would have won this week if it wasn't for Florida's defense giving up 402. But Hendon Hooker almost getting 300 yards, and then we saw Raheem Sanders have a big game. Let's go on to my team, and we put up 225 yards. That's a number that you can get behind. And since Wade is now in Baton Rouge, the 225. So Stetson Bennett, the quarterback, he had a really phenomenal game. 284 yards passing, then a couple of touchdowns through the air, and then had one on the ground. Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back for the Alabama Crimson Tide, he had 36 yards on the ground. He did work for the Alabama Crimson Tide on Saturday night through the air and the receiving. Jonathan Mingo, the wide receiver of Ole Miss, he was the top target for Ole Miss, but Ole Miss actually relied more heavily on Zach Evans. He had 2 touchdowns in that 42-0 win. 74 yards for Mingo. And then Alabama defense, once again, 169 yards. Louisiana Monroe really couldn't do anything. So I take it once again, 225 yards. So Wade is still looking for his first win here in SEC fantasy land. So let's go on to now SEC fantasy draft for week 4. Let's start with the gunslingers. And we just saw these two on the field with Will Rogers and Jaden Daniels.
We did. We watched these guys square off, and it was Jaden Daniels, I think, that led in passing miraculously. He definitely led in total yardage, but I would say Daniels outdueled Rogers in their dual match. But here, for SEC fantasy purposes, Mississippi State is playing a group of 5 team this weekend. So I think that Rogers kind of rights the ship. Mississippi State's able to air it out like they like to. So I didn't really want to play any games here. I saw a favorable matchup, and I'm 0-3 in SEC fantasy, so I had to give Will Rogers the nod.
Well, definitely going for reliable here. I'm going to give this man a spotlight. He's deserved it. Jaden Daniels out of LSU. They are playing a pesky bunch in New Mexico, especially on the defensive side, not less on the offensive side. But Daniels, really had a good game against Mississippi State. He had 93 yards on the ground, but as an SEC fantasy, I won't get that, but I do get the passing yards. I think he'll probably get like 230 or 240. I'm not looking for anything miraculous. I know that Will Rogers is probably going to put up 300 plus easily. He can just walk out of bed and put 300 yards on that Bowling Green defense. But I'm going to go with Daniels. He deserves a spotlight, and might as well, since I'm 3-0, and I'll maybe go easy on you this week. That way you can get a win.
Just like you did in real fantasy, huh?
Yeah. Absolutely. So we'll go on to the running backs here. You're going with South Carolina Gamecock and Marshawn Lloyd. I'm going with Old Reliable here in the running backs of Devin A-Chain. You actually wanted A-Chain.
I did. You stole A-Chain from me. I thought he was buried enough that I could get him with my 3rd pick because I was a real big fan of the wide receiver I'm about to show you also.
Yep.
Tyler just talked about spotlighting. I'm going to give a spotlight here to Marshawn Lloyd. He has a favorable matchup against Charlotte. He seems to be getting the volume. He's getting 10 carries a game. So I think that he can turn one of those into a big run. And this guy was a 5-star recruit, number 2 running back in the class of 2019. So he had an ACL tear his freshman season, and then last year his redshirt freshman season, kind of split time. Still kind of splitting time this year, but I think he's the guy. And hopefully he has a little bit of Marshawn Lynch in him, if you will.
Almost the name there. I think that this is definitely the game to get Marshawn Lloyd, as Charlotte's defense ranks at the worst at the bottom of the NCAA. They've just been giving up 40 points a game, just squeaking out a victory against Georgia State this past week. And so I think that South Carolina, expect them to look to Lloyd in the running game. I'm going to go with A-Chain here. A-Chain had a phenomenal game against Miami, 80 yards on the ground, and then had more in the receiving game. But I think that A-Chain usually does well against Arkansas. I think that Texas A&M is going to rely heavily on their running game because they won't be able to really pass it against a really stout secondary. So I'm going to go A-Chain here as my running back. So let's go on to the pass catchers. I know that you kind of hinted of who you're going with here, and that's going to be Dane Key, who had a really good game last week and against Youngstown State.
Yeah, this is a guy that I've kind of kept tabs on to start the season. Kentucky hasn't really played too many good teams. They did play Florida on the road, and Key was a key part of that success.
Yes, a key.
So I'm going to give him the nod here against a favorable matchup, a favorable opponent. They're playing Northern Illinois, so we saw Vanderbilt take down the Huskies at home, so something tells me Kentucky's going to have their way at home. So look for Key to be making his debut this weekend for us, and I think he's a guy that we'll see throughout SEC fantasy, kind of like Wan'Dale Robinson last year.
Yeah,
he was a
absolutely. That's what he was reminding me of. I'm going to go for Tennessee pass catcher, but it's not going to be Cedric Tillman. It's going to be Jalen Hyatt. I think he's just as talented as Cedric Tillman. It looks like, Hendon Hooker has been leaning towards Hyatt than Cedric Tillman, especially last game against Akron. We'll see if it happens against the Florida defense, who just gave up 402 yards and 28 points against South Florida. But look for Hyatt to have another big game. He had a big game against Akron, 2 touchdowns. I'm not really looking for that, but definitely could be a 100-yard receiving game. So let's go to the defenses. This unit killed you. So you're going to go with the LSU Tiger defense, who would look stout this past weekend against Mississippi State.
I am. I think that the Tigers earned their nod here. You know, they really took over that game against Mississippi State, and if they can shut down Will Rogers and that air raid offense, I think they can handle New Mexico. And really, this LSU defense has looked good all season. There were some missed tackles week one against Florida State, and the Southern game they forced a lot of turnovers, even scored a couple times against Mississippi State last week, and the same kind of thing, wrecking havoc, making turnovers, giving the offense the short field. So I look for that to continue this Saturday.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely a deserving unit that's and worthy of that spotlight. I'm going to go for board pick here. I know that Georgia's defense one of the best in the SEC in the nation, but I like their matchup against Kent State. I think it's just going to be another tune-up game for Georgia. I thought about going somewhere else, but I just feel like Georgia got to go with the safe pick just in case if Jane Daniels, doesn't even play, for like one quarter. Because last time that LSU played in a non-conference game in a lower-level opponent, Jane Daniels only played a quarter. So who knows how long that Jane Daniels will be on the field. I'd probably say like 3 quarters at least as they have Auburn next week. But I'm going to go Georgia's defense. I think that this is going to be complete overmatch against Kent State. So this is a safe pick for both of us. All right, let's go on now to recapping the SEC, recapping week 3. But before we get into that, we actually have a question here as who are your sponsors? So we actually have a couple of sponsors here thanks to being part of the Old City Sports Network. Buffalo Bayou Brewing Company, that's a local brewery by Chet's Place in Houston. We have Norse Beards, Righteous Felon, Jerky. We also have a big announcement that will be unveiling a new sponsor for us later in the show. So definitely stay tuned to that. So let's get into some games here. A lot of jam-packed action we had in the SEC season. Starting with the first one, man, your South Carolina Gamecocks did not play well in this one as Georgia put a whooping on them, 48-7. You see there, Brock Bowers, he had 121 yards and 2 touchdowns. That would have been, the receiver to get last week. Tight ends do count in SEC.
I almost took him.
South Carolina just completely overmatched in this one. My concerns came through of South Carolina's defense against this high-powered Georgia offense as we have seen the first couple of weeks. And Stetson Bennett just tore him apart. And I think that Bennett, already has locked up a Heisman Trophy ceremony unless, he just tanks the whole season. So, but what are your thoughts here? Obviously, Georgia's looking like the number 1 team in the land.
Yeah, Georgia looks really dominant. This defense just reloaded and came back. In their usual form. South Carolina, they tried to get some energy going early. They took the opening kickoff, weren't able to move the ball. And from that point forward, Georgia just really took over this ball game. So for South Carolina, this is disappointing. You can still see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, we're good.
It glitched on me for a second. South Carolina, definitely disappointing for the Gamecocks. I mean, we keep waiting for them to take that next leap forward. They showed life against Arkansas, but here against Georgia, just completely mismatched.
Yeah, absolutely. So South Carolina, a rough matchup for them, but they will try and looking to bounce back against Charlotte. This was just a complete overmatch from the beginning, but I expect that South Carolina and Shane Beamer's ball club will bounce back from this because not many teams are going to be able to keep it close with Georgia, even the Alabamas of the world. So let's go on to the next game that featured interesting storyline here. Actually, the head coach of Kentucky, Mark Stoops, grew up in Youngstown, Ohio, so you get to face his hometown school in Youngstown State, and it was a blanking of 31-0 against Youngstown State. You see there, your wide receiver is our player of the game here, Dane Key, 6 receptions, 90 yards, and a touchdown. Just Kentucky being Kentucky, I mean, this was a really good football team. I know that you have always been high on this team since the beginning of the season. Coming from that big game in the swamp against Florida, now just handling their business. So just keeping the wheels moving if you're the Kentucky Wildcats.
Yep.
All right, we're going to go on to the next game, which was an FCS versus an SEC opponent. This is our second straight matchup that we're seeing. As we see here, the player of the game for the Missouri Tigers, Dominic Lovett, the wide receiver. He had 132 yards and 2 touchdowns as Missouri won this game 34-17. This was a good game for Missouri after just getting completely embarrassed on the road to a Kansas State team that just lost to Tulane, which is not far from us, but we'll talk about that later on. But yeah, this was definitely needed for Missouri, especially you have a big game coming up against an Auburn team that just struggled against Penn State. So definitely a big win for Missouri going forward. All right, let's go on now to the next game, which featured an SEC versus an ACC opponent with number 20 Ole Miss go on the road to Atlanta to face Georgia Tech. This is a very interesting road game. At Ole Miss, man, they have been looking really, really good. They have they're really closest opponent that given them a challenge so far is Troy in that first game, 20-10. Ole Miss won this one, but as you see there, Zach Evans, the transfer from TCU, really had an outstanding game, 134 yards on 18 carries and 2 touchdowns. And Georgia Tech offense absolutely shut down by this Ole Miss defense. I think a lot of people love to talk about Lane Kiffin and his schemes on the offensive side, but you got to give this Ole Miss defense a credit because, this Georgia Tech team, on the offense is always a pesky bunch, but Ole Miss was able to shut them down. So definitely, Ole Miss, I know that we've been talking a lot about Arkansas in the SEC West, but who's not to say Ole Miss can compete in the West with Alabama?
I think Ole Miss's defense is probably maybe the second best in the West, potentially third. I think A&M's defense probably still is the best in the conference. On the western side of the conference. Georgia's is probably the best overall. But yeah, Ole Miss's defense has been really impressive. And I know we haven't seen them go up against a surefire offense quite yet. But to me, this unit looks just as good as Alabama's and LSU and Arkansas. So, the offense for Ole Miss is good, but maybe not as high-powered as we thought going into the year. So the defense has really held their own.
Yeah, Jackson Dart, is not really having the numbers that we saw with Matt Corral in his 3 to 4 years here with Ole Miss. But it seems, like Ole Miss is fine going with the running game. Zach Evans has the capabilities of being an every down back, and he showed that on Saturday against Georgia Tech. So a really good out-of-conference win for Ole Miss as their schedule will just get harder and harder as it goes. And we'll go on now to the next SEC West game on the slate. And this was not so good for SEC brethren down there in the Plains as number 22, Penn State, came into a sold-out Jordan-Hare Stadium. It was an orange-out game and put up 41 against Auburn as Auburn finished this with a lonely 12 as TJ Finley went down with an injury in this one. We'll talk about that news that just broke today as Auburn went with their backup quarterback. Did not work out so well, and the defense for Auburn just absolutely got gashed. Nick Singleton had over 100 yards once again and 2 touchdowns. And then Sean Clifford really had a phenomenal game. He showed his veteran experience, a 6-year quarterback. But I expected Penn State to win this game, but not so much. I want to get your thoughts on this and where you see Auburn heading from here.
Yeah, I didn't expect it to be this big of a deficit for Auburn. I thought Auburn would give them a game. I thought it would be within 10 points. So to see 41-12 on the screen, very surprising to me. I think we knew Auburn's offense wasn't there, but I did think their defense would hold Penn State under 40 points. I thought this game was going to be in the 20s, but maybe we're or maybe I did. Maybe I underestimated Penn State's offense a little bit. Maybe Sean Clifford deserves some more credit. I know that Jacob on Sports Scramble gives them a lot of love. So, yeah, Penn State sitting here at number 22 definitely could make some noise in the Big Ten. And Auburn, I think this kind of tells us that Auburn's going to be the bottom of the barrel in the SEC West this year.
Yeah, this Saturday's game could be a telltale all for Auburn fans against a Missouri team that's really been struggling. You getting beat by Kansas State 40 to pretty much the same score like this, and so now that they'll be out with their starting quarterback. But we'll go on to their rivals of the Alabama Crimson Tide. We'll see. Actually, no, I completely forgot. Sorry, Vanderbilt. Sorry, Vanderbilt. But
they do play.
Yes, Vanderbilt does play. So Vanderbilt went on to Northern Illinois, hit the road once again as Vanderbilt.
They scared us. They
scared us for a bit. It wasn't looking good for the Commodores in the first half, but they got it done 38-28 as Will Shepherd there for Vanderbilt. Look at that. 10 receptions, 171 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And Swan, the quarterback.
There's your SEC fantasy sleeper pick. Got to get him at some point on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Swan, the quarterback for Vanderbilt, who replaced Mike Wright a couple of weeks ago against Elon. They made the change at quarterback. Mike Wright had the dual threat capabilities, but just didn't have the arm that Clark Lee was looking for his starting quarterback. But this is a really good win for Vanderbilt. Now they're 3-1, and here's your test. You have the number 1 team in the land next. So this is a very good win for Vanderbilt. I don't think many people saw this team even winning 3 games. So for them to do their business and handle their business in the out of conference has to be a really good thing for their program moving forward. All right, let's go now to Alabama. Sorry about that. I had it's Alabama ahead of Vanderbilt, but now we get to the Alabama Crimson Tide here. This was a team that last week we were talking about just edging out a win against Texas. This week, this is normal Alabama handling their business. No losing to ULM this time as they did in Nick Saban's first year there, but 63-7 against the Warhawks. As you saw there, Bryce Young, 236 yards passing and 3 touchdowns. He did also have 2 turnovers, so that is definitely concerning if you're an Alabama fan. But Jahmyr Gibbs, like we said, had a good game. The defense held their own. So this was just typical Alabama, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, Alabama, we expect them to be so dominant. That's why the Texas game, threw us off. So for UL Monroe, this was just bad timing. You knew you were going to get Alabama with the head of steam, and they came out and played like the number 2 team in the country.
Yeah, they did just that. So let's go on to the next game in the SEC slate for week 3. And this was week 3's SEC Talks game of the week between Mississippi State and LSU. I said that this was a swing game of whoever won this one would really, be in contention to really be in the conversation of the SEC West. You saw there the player of the game, Jaden Daniels. I gave it to him once again. I just keep giving him the player of the game. I'm just so impressed with him. I almost gave it to the whole entire LSU defensive unit because they really balled out. But Jaden Daniels, you see there, 210 yards passing, a touchdown, 16 carries, 93 yards, and a touchdown, once again being the leading rusher. But LSU won this game 31-16, and this was really tale of 2 halves here. Mississippi State got out to a 13-0 lead. And then LSU was able to strike before the half, get it to 13-7. And then after that, LSU went on a 31-3 stretch. And I don't know if I've ever seen, that big of adjustment. So whatever Matt House talked to the defense or whatever Brian Kelly did, it worked. So give me your thoughts. We were at this game, so the environment was really crazy, really fun environment to be in. But what were your thoughts on this game? What were you impressed on?
I was just, like you said, really impressed with how the LSU defense turned it on shortly after halftime, and they went on a 24-3 run to finish the game. So hard to beat that.
Yeah.
Actually, was it a 31-3 run?
I guess it was a 31-3 run in the second half, but in the fourth quarter, it was 21-0. LSU scored 21 points in the fourth.
Yeah, so a really dominant fourth quarter for the Tigers. And my thoughts were, it was pretty incredible that Jaden Daniels outdueled Will Rogers in this one.
Yeah.
I did expect LSU to run the ball a little bit better in this one, but, with the running backs. But the fact that Daniels made up for that on the ground with his legs is the reason why he's starting for the Tigers. And I thought it was just really phenomenal coming out of that timeout in the fourth quarter when LSU needed to go down the field and get the go-ahead score. On fourth down, they decided to throw it 20 yards down the field, and he found Malik Neighbors for the completion. So that was kind of the play of the game for me.
Yeah.
But, yeah, really hard-gutted win for LSU, and I think this team has a lot of life in it.
Yeah, I really haven't seen a game, where I've seen like Mississippi State and LSU. I don't know. I've lost track of how many times both teams went for it on fourth down. I feel like a lot of, Mike Leach and, we're playing chess with LSU. But I think you mentioned Malik Neighbors that fourth down grab. But I think the game-changing play was Austin Williams muffing the punt, and that just completely changed the momentum of LSU. And after that, LSU went on that 21-0 run in the fourth quarter. So this was a huge win for LSU. This is looking like a completely different team that we saw 2 weeks ago in New Orleans against Florida State. I think Mississippi State, if you're a State fan, I think your team's going to be fine. Still a lot of veteran talent. I just think that LSU's defensive scheme was just as good as you can script it. So I think Mississippi State going forward could still be in contention to be a dark horse in the SEC West with their schedule. So let's go on now to the Arkansas Razorbacks as they welcome back Bobby Petrino, their old friend, not really friend anymore. I don't think Arkansas fans really like that guy anymore. But man, Missouri State, we were looking up at the scoreboard when we were in Tiger Stadium. Missouri State was up 17-13 in the third quarter. I was like, what is going on with Arkansas? This is not, the Arkansas team that we've been talking about these past couple of weeks, but they did get the job done 38-27. As bad as they look, a win is a win here. And Raheem Sanders, this is your fantasy running back for this week. 22 carries. Oh, no, it wasn't this week. 167 yards.
I got the
last week. I'm getting mixed up. So a very big day for him. KJ Jefferson didn't really have to do too much, but this was a really close game that I didn't really expect being close.
Yeah, Sanders kind of needed this to be his spa treatment day, man. He needed to run it 10 times and then get rest up for the Texas A&M game. So a little bit of an unnecessary wear and tear here for Arkansas. You don't want to have your starters playing against Missouri State into the fourth quarter before your rivalry game. But, it is what it is. They got the win. They didn't completely embarrass themselves. But I think you and I both expect better football games to come from the Razorbacks.
Yeah, absolutely. I expect a better game, hopefully in Arlington this week against their rival in Texas A&M. So that, like you said, as bad as it looked, still to get a win and stay undefeated is huge for this program. So we'll head down to Rocky Top as Tennessee played the Akron Zips, and this was not a close game, folks. 63-6 was your final score. Akron is just not a good football team. Tennessee is just light years away. Jalen Hyatt, my receiver this week in SEC. He had 5 receptions, 166 yards, and 2 touchdowns. This is just, Tennessee proving that they're going to be one of the best teams in the SEC. So we'll move right on to this one. Was just Tennessee handling their business. And we'll go on now to the Florida Gators here as they also had a struggle with their in-state opponent in South Florida. South Florida in week 1 absolutely got drubbed by BYU. So this was definitely a big game for them to kind of get some momentum. I think that they're going to use that the rest of their American Athletic Conference schedules. But, man, Florida, they're just a team that I cannot figure out. They beat a top 7 team in Utah in week 1, and then they lose to Kentucky. And then now they, barely beat South Florida. It came down to the last drive. South Florida was pretty much controlling the whole entire game. But Anthony Richardson did not look good once again. This is his second straight game that he didn't really look good. Had 2 interceptions. So as you see there, the player of the game there had to give it to the Florida running back. He had 6 carries, 103 yards, and a touchdown. So Florida's running game was huge in this one, but the defense, man, yikes. Once again, yikes again is all I got to say. But Florida gets the job done 31-28, but a lot of fixing needs to happen on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I think that maybe Florida got kind of ahead of themselves after that big week 1 win over Utah. And, we saw them lose to Kentucky. Kentucky's a really good team, so I didn't think much of it. But this game definitely has me scratching my head. I don't really know what to expect from Florida. Yeah. I think that Anthony Richardson is a very dynamic player. I think this offense can succeed. But I still kind of got the notion that they were going to be led by their defense, but then they let up 402 yards against South Florida. So I just don't know. I think that, Florida's a little bit like LSU, welcoming a new coach and new coordinators. And I think there'll just be some games like this where they got lucky to win. If this was an SEC game, they would probably lose playing that sloppy. So you just got to shake it off and on to the next one for Florida and just be glad you won.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a lot of growing pains with this team. It's not easy going from one coach to another, but we'll go now to the final game here of the week 3 slate here in the SEC. And this was a big game here. This was a top 25 matchup between number 13 Miami and number 24 Texas A&M. Max Johnson did get the start in this one as Haynes King got relieved here. A&M did win this one 17-9. This was definitely huge for them after that App State loss. They really needed to gain some momentum before that showdown in Arlington against Arkansas. But Texas A&M's defense was able to shut down a Miami offense, that's been scoring in the first couple of 3 weeks. Tyler Van Dyke is one of the best quarterbacks in the ACC. As you see there, Devin Achane had a really good game both on the ground and then the reception. He had one touchdown reception. So this was a defensive battle. This was pretty much expected. Both really good defenses, but Texas A&M was able to score when they needed to. So this was a huge win for A&M, building some confidence going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we still didn't see that offense flourish by any means for the Aggies, but the defense remains one of the best in the country. So
yeah,
Miami, they've kind of had some offensive struggles. I think people kind of expected more out of them, and with Tyler Van Dyke, coming back, and then they added Henry Parrish, a transfer running back from Ole Miss, Will Mallory, one of the top tight end prospects. So you kind of thought the offense was going to be there. They only put up 30 against Southern Mississippi, and here just 9 against Texas A&M. So I don't really know what to expect from Miami going forward. I do think Texas A&M will end up having a good year because of the defense, but I do think their offense will limit them when they have to go up against Alabama and Mississippi State and LSU and some of these teams that can score the ball.
Yeah, for sure. So before we close the book on week 3, let's dive into our pick'em results. And this Miami-Texas A&M game was a swing game. I know you and Chet picked the Miami Hurricanes. I was alone A&M, so I was able to pick up a game, and that's why we're tied for first place on this week. 14-2 record. We'll take that.
Yeah, my pick'em is good. My fantasy is not.
Yeah, as the upset specialist, did pretty good, 11-5, but he finishes in third place in the group. So we will see how the group does. And a comment just flew by, and yep, a rough week for the upset specialist himself. Well, hopefully you get to pick it up, but I don't know. You had some pretty wild picks.
He didn't do himself any favors.
Yeah, you didn't do yourself any favors. So speaking of that, let's get into week 4 games in the SEC, which is brought to you by Norse Beard. So if you want really nice, good-looking beard. I know that you and I are not really growing any beards right now. We're clean-shaven right now. But you can head on over to www.norsebeards.com and use promo code OCS for 25% off your Beardsman's products. All right, let's go diving in. We have another comment rolling in. Vandy boys. Well, that you pretty much already spoiling what's about to happen. So, all right. We'll get to that game in a minute, but starting off the 11 o'clock games, Kent State at number 1 Georgia. This should be a pretty easy pick for us.
G.
All right, Georgia fans, this should definitely be another tune-up game. You go from, blowing out South Carolina to are you going to score more or less points than what you did a couple,
I'll say less because I don't think they're going to play all the starters.
Yeah, true. We could see a game like the Stanford game when it was 33-0. So, yeah, you make a good point. But we will spend more time on this game, which is the first conference game in week 4 is Missouri at Auburn. Now, this is a huge game for both of these teams. I think whoever loses is going to finish last, not only in their division, but in the SEC. Missouri and Auburn, these are teams that are both 2-1 on the season. Auburn coming off of a drubbing at home against Penn State. Missouri coming off of a win against Abilene Christian. So who you got winning? Auburn does have the home advantage. So go ahead.
Yeah. No, like you said, Auburn has the home advantage. So that's kind of what swayed me towards picking the Auburn Tigers in this one over the Missouri Tigers. I know that TJ Finley's not going to be playing, but let's be real. I don't think this team depends on TJ Finley all too much. I think that their quarterbacks are interchangeable, and that's why they're still trying to figure it out in week 4. But I think that overall Auburn has a little bit more talent in this one. I expected the high 20s, low 30s. I think Auburn's kind of inconsistent. I could see them coming out and win this one by 15 to 17 points or something, and we think that they're back on track. But overall, I just think that Missouri is not going to have enough to hang in this one.
Yeah, the big news for Auburn in this one, TJ Finley's not actually starting this game. He will be out with injury. So either he's going to be Zach Calzada or the backup. I don't know the backup's name. I'm sorry.
Robbie Ashford.
Okay. So I'm going to go with Auburn as well. don't really have many confidence in this pick. I'm just going to go since it's at home. I think that this is going to be a defensive slugfest. Both of these offenses aren't great. I think this was going to be like a 17-14 type of a ball game. It's going to be a very ugly ball game. It's at 11 o'clock. Both of these teams are going to be very sleepy coming off Auburn coming off of – I think that Auburn's going to be more motivated coming off of that embarrassing loss to Penn State. Missouri, though, did build some confidence, but I see this one like a 17-14 game, going to be really close. But I'll just go with Auburn just because they're at home. And Chet's going to go with Auburn as well, so we're all going with the Auburn Tigers in the Tiger Bowl in this one. He said, especially if you want a beard like me and Jacob for sure, then the Big G, get Gordon. All right. We have a lot of Big G players on the LSU team, that's for sure. So next game is going to be Bowling Green at Mississippi State. Mississippi State is going to be looking to bounce back after the loss in Baton Rouge. So you see that happening? You see Bowling Green coming in here, pulling off an upset?
I see the bounce back. I think Will Rogers will.
Oh, yeah. If you drafted Will Rogers, you got to have Mississippi State winning.
Yep. It's not all about him, but it certainly helps when your quarterback can throw for 300 to 350 yards in a game. He kind of had an uncharacteristic game. I didn't really think that Mississippi State tried to stretch the field all too much against LSU. Opted for a lot more screen plays and crossing patterns, and I think that against Bowling Green they'll be able to run a full complement of pass routes. I don't think they'll have any, much resistance.
Yeah, I don't think that Mississippi State's going to have much of a problem against Bowling Green. I expect them to roll in this one like a 42-17 type of ball game. I just think that Mississippi State gets back on track there with the air raid attack before they get right back in to SEC play. I know that they have Texas A&M and Arkansas coming up in the coming weeks. So this is a big game. They got to get right, especially on the defensive side. They just – it looked like a completely different defense from the first half and the second half in the last game versus LSU. So I think that Mississippi State will really use this game to get right. And I think they do just that and get a victory in Starkville. And Chet will go with Mississippi State in this one. He's back rolling the Bulldogs this week. We'll go on to one of our two games of the week. We do have two really big matchups here in the SEC. This is the first one. This is going to be the 2:30 SEC on CBS game. So this is between number 20 Florida at number 11 Tennessee, a big one in the SEC East, especially in the SEC East race. Whoever wins this one will really get it, and whoever loses is honestly automatically out because I don't really see Georgia slipping up too much. So who do you have? Are you going to go with the Gators, go with the Vols at home?
Well, I'm going to go with Tennessee. If this one was in the swamp, I might go with Florida. But then again, they didn't defend their home turf against Kentucky. So I'm going to go with the team with a lot of momentum, and that is Tennessee. I think the Volunteers get it done. I think they make a statement in this one. I think they win this one 34-17.
Well, if you've been listening to me since the preseason, you know where I'm going with, and I'm going to go with
that power T.
Your team I've been going on. College game day is also going to be here, so Knoxville will be rocking the whole game and then the whole day in the morning as well. But I just think that this Tennessee offense is just too high-powered for me. I mean, Florida's defense hasn't been looking great against Kentucky. We saw give up 402 yards. I keep, bringing that up, but that is just yikes going into this one. You're facing a Tennessee offense that can beat you in many ways on the ground with Jabari Small and through the air with Jalen Hyatt and then also Cedric Tillman. And then Tennessee's defense, if Anthony Richardson does beat them, they're going to beat through Tennessee's secondary. There are some holes there, but if you probably won't be able to run the ball well against a Tennessee defensive line that is strong. But I'm going to go with Tennessee as well. This line is at 10.5. I think they covered that. I think I'm going to go with the same lines as your score. I'm going to go 34-13 in this one as Tennessee will get the job done as we're all
to a T.
all rolling with Rocky Top in this matchup there in Knoxville. So we will go on now to the next game. This is an out-of-conference matchup between Tulsa at number 16 Ole Miss. Ole Miss coming off of the big 42-0 win. Tulsa is a 2-1 squad and looking to play spoiler. But do you have Ole Miss continuing their business?
I do. I think that Tulsa, might have the offense to hang in this one, but we did talk about Ole Miss and their defense, and they've been very impressive carrying this team thus far. So I'm going to go with Ole Miss in this one. I think that they'll pull away late. I'm going to go with another 34-17 game.
Okay, I could definitely see that as well. You can put up another Ole Miss logo for me as well. I'm going to go with the Rebels at home. I just think that this Ole Miss defense is just going to be too much for Tulsa's offense to handle. Like you said, Tulsa does have some weapons on the offensive side that you can beat you in many ways. But I just think that Ole Miss's running game, if they can continue to get that going, then that's going to be huge for them because, Ole Miss in the past has been a pass-heavy offense. And now with Zach Evans, they can balance it out. So I'm going to go for a similar score as well. I'm going to go 38-14 in this one. I don't really expect Tulsa to really score that much as it will be all Rebels on Saturday morning. And Chet will be going with the Rebels as well. So we'll just continue on all agreement so far. We'll see if that changes down the stretch as we have Northern Illinois playing back-to-back SEC opponents. This time they have to travel to Lexington, Kentucky as they face your Kentucky Wildcats that you've been high on. So you have Kentucky beating Northern Illinois, or do you have Northern Illinois going 1-1 against SEC?
Come on, I can't jump off the bandwagon that easily.
I knew that.
But it's kind of a weird scheduling quirk to have Northern Illinois playing back-to-back SEC games. Might as well move them into the SEC East at this point. So, I'm going to go with Kentucky in this one. Another tune-up game. They handled their business against Florida, and then other than that, they've had some pretty easy games. They got Tennessee at some point in the near future, and then I think their last SEC game of the year is against Georgia. So they're about to buckle up for a ride. Just another tune-up game here, though.
You also have Mississippi State as their annual cross rival as well, so that will be a game that will test Kentucky's defense for sure. But I'm going to go Kentucky as well. Kentucky does have some experience playing against MAC teams. They played Miami of Ohio in their season opener. Did well against them. I expect them to do well against Northern Illinois. I think that Northern Illinois is going to go 0-2 versus SEC, losing to Vanderbilt last week and now losing to Kentucky. I just think that it's going to be too much on both sides of the ball, just too much talent for Northern Illinois to handle. NIU has definitely been a respectable team in the MAC. They made it to several conference championships and won several MAC titles, but I don't really see it here. I'm going to go with the Cats rolling at home. And Jet's going to go Big Blue. So all Kentucky once again, as I think that none of us really have gone away from Kentucky outside of the Florida-Kentucky matchup. So we'll go back into conference play here as this is another big one in Jerry World as number 10 Arkansas versus number 23 Texas A&M. Now, this is a series that ever since that A&M has joined the SEC, A&M has really controlled this series. But last year, Arkansas really broke that skid. This was a really dominating win for Arkansas. I know it was only 20-10, but it just felt like Arkansas dominated that game. So do you have the Hogs going on a 2-game win streak, or do you have A&M, taking what they want back?
I'm hog wild. Gotta go with Arkansas in this one. Defending Jerry World, Jerry Jones, one of the more famous Arkansas alum. That up there with Sam Walton, if you went to Arkansas. I know Walmart's from Arkansas. So, look out for Arkansas. They want to show out for their faithful crowd there in Dallas, a big presence as well for A&M. So it should be a very fun game to be at. And I think it'll be pretty much a house divided. I think both teams will sell out their allotment, and we should be in for a treat. But I just think Arkansas overall is the better team. I think the defenses are both really good. Texas A&M's is probably better, but Arkansas's offense is just light years ahead of A&M's at this point.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of what you just said. Arkansas, I'm not really worried about last week's game against Missouri State. I think that they were looking ahead to this game. This is just a big game to look ahead to. You have 18, 20-year-olds looking, that Texas A&M is waiting for you. It's a big game, big rivalry game. But like you said, Arkansas, I definitely think that they have the advantage on the offensive side. I don't even think, Texas A&M's defense really has, it's like 1A and 1B. I think that Arkansas has, the defensive scheme against Texas A&M. But I'm going to go with the Hogs. I'm going to go hog wild as well. So I think that this is going to be a really close game, as it always is in this rivalry game. It'll probably be low scoring, kind of similar to last year's score. I'll go 23-17 Arkansas and winning this game. And Chet's actually going to go the opposite direction. He's going to go Texas A&M. So this could be a game that we look back on that he could pick up a game, or we pick up a game as well. So Wade and I will be rolling with the Hogs, and Chet will be saying gig 'em this week against Arkansas. All right, let's go on now to another SEC versus Mountain West matchup here. This is the
Don't
first
hear that
time.
too often.
Yeah, this is the first matchup that we see here between New Mexico and LSU. LSU has played New Mexico State. Now they get to play just New Mexico this time. New Mexico, I read a little bit about them. Their defense, as you said, ranks 121st in the nation. They have just been struggling their first 3 weeks. Actually, no, switch that. Their offense is 121st in the nation. They haven't really been scoring good, but their defense is only giving up 20 points per game as LSU, coming off of that big win against Mississippi State, 31-16. So do you have LSU handling their business, or do you have New Mexico spoiling their plans?
Got that LSU purple and gold, no doubt about it. To me, I think the defense will continue to lead LSU, and I think that hopefully Jaden Daniels can play well, but he doesn't have to play too stressful of football and can stay up on his feet.
Yeah, I agree. I think that LSU is going to have no business handling a New Mexico offense that's going to struggle against the LSU defense that's started to pick up its strides, and LSU and Jaden Daniels will be able to score and really put this one out of reach by half. So I'm going to go with the Tigers at home for their third straight game in Death Valley, and they'll go 3-0 in that stretch. As Chet will go with LSU as well. So we're all rolling with Tigers this week against the New Mexico Lobos, one of the best nicknames in all of college football.
I do like that one. That's a good one.
Yeah. Next, we'll go on back to conference play here as Vanderbilt has to go on and face the number 2 team in the land, the Alabama Crimson Tide. Now, on SEC Talk, we have been giving Vanderbilt this team some love, but I think our love stops here. We should see at least 2 ways on the screen. So you're going to go with Alabama or go with, the upset of the century here, go with the Dogs?
I'll reserve that upset. Yeah, I got to go with Alabama in this one, no doubt. To me, that Alabama's, still a really good football team. I think that the Texas game was a wake-up call. I wouldn't be surprised to see Alabama turn in another undefeated season going into Atlanta for the conference title. I do think that at this point, Georgia is the number 1 team in the conference, no doubt about it, but Alabama's right there with them.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that, Alabama, that was their wake-up call in that Texas game. And, you got to give credit to Texas. I mean, with Quentin Ewers, that's, arguably a top 10 team in the country with the talent that they have on the defense and the offensive side. Going into this game, Alabama should have no problem. As always, the last meeting was 59-0 against Vanderbilt. I don't think it's going to be that bad. I think that Alabama will probably get into the 40s. Vanderbilt will probably get to like 10 or 13. But I'm going to go with Alabama at home. Just going to be too much for Vanderbilt to handle. It's been a good season so far for Vanderbilt, but their run kind of stops here at home. I'm going to pull this up, pull it up.
Oh, boy. I just don't even want to hit the arrow.
Upset of the century, baby. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, okay, I have a question for you. If Vanderbilt does win, does this top Appalachian State over Michigan in 2007?
I don't want to say yes because, technically it's just a conference win, but I got to say yes.
This is like a 40 – Alabama, I kid you not, is a 41.5-point favorite in this game. So this –
I wouldn't touch the line, but yeah.
Yeah, So,
a lot of points.
You are not dreaming, folks, the viewers of SEC Talk. Chet is rolling with the Vanderbilt Commodores. So, tune in to Saturday night if that actually happens. We'll see. All right. Let's see if there's any more upsets stored before we end here on SEC Talk. Man, I'm losing my words. So I'm just in shock.
Yeah, you're so shook.
Yeah, so we'll move on to Charlotte at South Carolina. Charlotte picked up their first win. They beat Georgia State 42-41 in a high-scoring shootout there in Atlanta. South Carolina, trying to bounce back against Georgia. So do you have the Gamecocks bouncing back? You had the Charlotte team that could put up points on you in a heartbeat. So are you going to go with the Gamecocks or go with the 49ers?
I'm going to go with the Gamecocks because that Charlotte defense doesn't look all too good. So I think South Carolina can impose a little physicality on him, hopefully run the ball behind Marshawn Lloyd, and let Spencer Rattler get comfortable. I think that the last 2 weeks have really gotten to him. You could say it rattled him a little bit, and he kind of got his taste of what the SEC can be all about. But chin up for him. Those are two of the better SEC defenses he'll face. Still a lot to play for South Carolina. They're not going to win the SEC East, but they can still make a good bowl game if they can win the next 2 weeks out of conference, and then they jump right into that conference schedule.
Yeah, no, sure. I think that South Carolina, even with the loss against Georgia, there's still everything ahead of them. I think that they can still be in for a good season. I definitely think that this is a good spot to have Charlotte after that SEC game. Charlotte ranks as dead last of defense. They do have a talented offense, but I think this is a get-right game for South Carolina. Look for Spencer Rattler to have a good game. I'll go with the Gamecocks at home. And we see yet another upset here.
This one's less crazy, but
oh yeah, this is less crazy. South Carolina is a 22-point favorite, but this would still be a head scratcher if you're a Gamecock fan. You cannot lose to Charlotte. They're one of the worst teams in the Conference USA and have some of the worst uniforms in college football ever. I just hate those uniforms.
Yeah, all right, throw that one in there.
I had to. I just hate it. All right, so now we'll look outside of the SEC, and this is presented by Righteous Felon Craft Jerky. I know that Chet has ordered him a bunch. I know that Jacob told me on College Football Coast to Coast that he ordered some as well. So if you want to order some for yours as well and your family, you can go head on over to www.righteousfelon.com and use promo code OCSN for 15% off the best beef jerky around, and that is no question about that. All right. Now let's jump outside into the top 4 games outside the SEC, and this is a big one in the ACC. As number 5, Clemson, at number 21, Wake Forest. I know that a lot of people rag me of how I pronounce Clemson, but deal with it. So
we like it. We like it.
The Tigers and Demon Deacons in this matchup. So who you got?
Wake Forest.
Well, why am I surprised?
Maybe this is a speak it into existence pick. I don't know, but Wake Forest at home. They've been close against Clemson in years past, and Clemson's offense just looks pretty mediocre. I do think eventually they'll figure it out, and I could see them winning this game. Their defense is really good, but Sam Hartman's a special player, and he kind of grew up playing high school football in North Carolina and South Carolina, so he's got some ties to Clemson, I'm sure, and I think it would be a great way to cap off his redshirt senior season, battling back from injury and making the big win.
Yeah, definitely a lot of storylines for that. It's hard not to root for Sam Hartman and this Wake Forest team, but the Tigers did win this one against Wake Forest 28-14 last season. That was at Clemson's home stadium. Now it's shifted to Wake Forest. They have the home crowd. I think that's going to be a really good crowd. It is an 11 o'clock game, so it is going to be a morning wake-up call for Dabo and crew. I think that Wake Forest, that offense is going to be too much for this one. Wake Forest defense has struggled in the past weeks. They just gave up 36 points to Liberty. But I think that they get their statement win of the season that they've been looking for. I think that they get it done. It's going to be a close game. I'm not really expecting it to be a blowout, but I'm going to go Wake Forest at home and go with an upset here. And Chet is also going to go for upset.
Dang, I should have taken Clemson.
We're in trouble. Yeah,
well, Clemson, congratulations. You win.
Yep. So this is not always a good sign here on the show. As all 3 of us are going with Wake Forest, so that should make all the Clemson fans watching very happy. So number 17, Baylor at Iowa State. This is a big game in the Big 12. Baylor's lone loss is in BYU. It's out of conference. Baylor still has everything in front of him to get to the Big 12 championship. Iowa State is 3-0. I mean, I talked about this on College Football Coast to Coast. They had all the talent in the world last year, and they went like 8-4. So I guess they just, like when no one's talking about them, whenever no one's talking about the clone. So in this matchup, are you going to go with Iowa State at home? This is a very tough place to play. We've seen highly ranked teams go down here. Do you see Baylor doing that?
Yeah, I don't like that this is a road game for Baylor. I think they're the more talented team, but that is a tough trip, and this is a matchup that we'll see for many years to come as they'll both kind of step into leadership roles in the Big 12. Some of the remaining members. So look for this game to always be a good one. I am going to go with Baylor, though. I actually got the pleasure of watching these two teams play, I think 4 years ago now, kind of when Iowa State started to really become good, and Baylor was kind of rising back from those NCAA, punishments. And it was a really, really fun game to watch, a lot of offense. So I look for this one to be a little bit lower scoring. Both of these teams are among the leaders in the Big 12 at defense. So I think Baylor sneaks this one out. I'm going to go 23-20.
Yeah, I could see that same score happening here. This was a coin flip for me. This is always tough picking against Iowa State, but I'm going to do it here. It's just hard for me to see Baylor already a 2-loss team in week 4. So I think that they get it done. I think that their defense will rise to the occasion against the talented Iowa State offense. I think that Baylor's offense, their run game needs to get going here. They can't really get one-dimensional against Iowa State. Iowa State really bogged down their opponents in the first couple of weeks, so they could definitely do it here. But I'm going to go Baylor here. I'll go pretty much the same score, but I'll go 21-17, the Baylor Bears. And Chet's going to go with Baylor as well. So
congratulations, Iowa State.
Yeah, congratulations, Iowa State. All right. So, all right, all Baylor Bears, and this one we will see on Saturday afternoon. And now we'll go to the Pac-12. Big game here in the Pac-12. Oregon coming off of that big win at home against BYU, who was in a top 12 team. And Washington State, no one has talked about this team. This was a team that went on the road to Madison, Wisconsin, and got the victory over then ranked number 15 Wisconsin. They won that game 17-14. Washington State is 3-0. They are the home underdog in this one. Oregon is the touchdown favorite. So you're going to go with the Ducks on the road, or going to go with the Cougars at home in Pullman?
Well, I didn't really know Washington State was still undefeated. That's a good storyline. I think maybe there's a good chance they win then, but I got to give Oregon a little bit of love. I think they bounced back in a big way and got a win over BYU, as you mentioned. And Georgia's just really good, and there's gonna be a lot of teams that look really bad against Georgia. So I don't think Oregon's a playoff contender. I don't think they'll win their conference, but this is still a team that could get to like 8 wins.
Yeah, I think they get a pass for that week 1 because it feels like a lot of people will be on that same boat that Oregon was in week 1. But you got to be impressed with Bo Nix against BYU in the last weekend's matchup. Bo Nix had 5 touchdowns, his best game with the Oregon Ducks. Now, Oregon, the past 2 weeks, they put up like 77 against Eastern Washington team. Now they put up 41 against a really good BYU team. This is a tough trip. All right, I'm going to go with Washington State upsets Oregon. We're not doing none of this, all on the same script anymore. I think that Washington State gets it done. This is a really good football team that a lot of people are going to start noticing after they get this win at home against Oregon. I trusted Washington, their brethren. They don't really like each other, but I'm going to go with the 2 Washington schools back-to-back. I picked Washington to upset Michigan State. That happened, and now this will. So I'm going to go 2-0 in the Washington State. So I'm going to go with the Cougs at home. And Chet's going to go with the Oregon Ducks. So, yeah, I'm feeling really good about this. All right, let's do it.
You can get a leg up.
All right, so let's go on now to the Big Ten game of the week here. Not really good games in the Big Ten. I think the other one was Maryland at number 4, Michigan. That's a good one, 3-0. Both of those teams. And so Ohio State's actually going to go with a blackout game in this one. So that's not a good sign already for Wisconsin. That's going to be a really raucous crowd. So you got the Badgers or Ohio State in this matchup. Ohio State has really dominated this series as of late.
Yeah, I think that we might see these teams play again in December for the conference championship. But, there's still a lot of time to determine who wins either side. But here in the regular season, I think Ohio State takes care of business. C.J. Stroud looks really good. This offense looks pretty balanced between the run and the pass.
Yeah, I don't expect this one to be close. Graham Mertz is going to have to play a whale of a game if he wants to do this one. I just think that Wisconsin's defense has always been one of the best in the land. I think that Ohio State is just really good. They have a lot of talent on the offensive side. I expect this one to be like 42-20 type of game. I'm going to roll the Buckeyes at home. I don't really expect this one to be close as these couple of games I've seen. But I honestly don't see Wisconsin get into the Big Ten championship. I think that Minnesota is a team that can get there as well. But I think
Hey, I think they
that the
can
Big
too.
Ten West is just a really disastrous division so far. There's some teams, like Nebraska that's fallen off. Northwestern, beat Nebraska and then lost to Duke and then Southern Illinois. So, Big Ten West is still up for grabs, but in this one, the Big Ten East will prevail with the Buckeyes. And Chet will also roll the Buckeyes as
All
well.
right, he's
We
not
should
he's
be,
not
we should be
crazy.
pretty safe. Wisconsin don't feel good about us all picking them. I think that Ohio State will cruise in this game. So now that is all of our games outside and inside the conference. And then we'll roll on to Hot Topics, which is sponsored by our new Fanatics. We are now partnered with Fanatics. I'm sure a lot of sports fans know about this site. So Old City Sports Network really did a good job with this. Gave us our own link. So if you want to get your merch, any college you want, especially the SEC school, since we're SEC taught, but you can be any school you want. So you can use our link there of www.fanatics.com/sports. I believe the sports is capitalized. Chet will have to correct me if I'm wrong on that, but definitely use our link if you definitely want the best merch around. All right, let's get into some hot topics here. The first one is Tennessee extending their head coach, Josh Heupel, giving him a $1 million raise. So he's getting that cool cash and he's getting a contract extension. So do you believe that Tennessee is in the right direction with Josh Heupel? I think this was a fantastic hire and definitely the rebuild that he was really in did a phenomenal job.
Yeah, this was a good hire, and it kind of tells teams like Nebraska and some of these other jobs that might open up to just back off. He's our guy. I think it would literally have to be, like a top 5 kind of job for him to leave Tennessee because he's got good resources there. If you can hang with Georgia, you're in good shape in the SEC East. And I think he'll want to stay put.
And then some news surrounding the SEC this week is that some scheduling changes at the SEC has directed Tennessee to nix the Oklahoma series as Oklahoma and Texas will be joining the SEC either in 2024 and 2025. And also the 2023 SEC schedule release was today. So we saw a lot of teams. It's pretty much the same matchups that I really saw in week 1 and week 2. Looks like the home and homes that we're seeing with Utah and Florida, LSU and Florida State is playing. Texas is traveling to Alabama. And then Auburn is traveling to Cal. So definitely some interesting matchups that we'll see. I'm definitely going to be interested how, the SEC works on the schedule and then how either the divisions or the pods will work whenever Oklahoma and Texas join the SEC. So the next hot topic we have is surrounding Auburn. The question that I have for you, I'm sure a lot of Auburn fans are wanting to know is it time for Auburn to make a change at the head coach?
I don't know. I mean, if it's all Harson's fault or not, I was a big fan of that hire, just kind of thinking outside the box, going and getting a guy who won a lot of football games at Boise State. But, he had some personal issues come up. And I think that kind of rubs some people the wrong way at Auburn. And ultimately, I think their athletic director resigned. Unrelated, but just a lot of turmoil over there. So, yeah, they're going to hire a new athletic director, and if that athletic director has a strong opinion one way or another, which I'm sure he or she will, with it being SEC football, they might have a guy that they want to bring in to coach, and that might be the end of it for Harsin.
Yeah. Could definitely be some changes coming up in the months of either September and October, especially if Auburn were to drop this weekend to Missouri, and the wheels just keep falling off. But we will definitely keep an eye on Auburn's football head coach and see if Brian Harsin keeps his job or not. So the last hot topic I got for you is which team had the best performance in the SEC in week 3?
I got to go with LSU. I know it's a little bit of a homer pick, but
Hey, it's warranted.
The defense just looks really good, and I think Jaden Daniels is playing pretty good. So a lot to like there from LSU. Another team that probably impressed, Texas A&M getting back on track with the win over Miami, but I'm sure I'm forgetting someone as well. But yeah, I think LSU to me was the standout team.
Yeah. I know it's a homer pick, but it's definitely warranted. Definitely a huge win for LSU. So that will be it, really, for our show. We'll just get through the answering questions. We don't have any more comments, but we got through that throughout the majority of the show. So that will be it for the end of this week's show. Another fun week. I definitely enjoy doing this with Wade. So I know he loves talking sports, and I do as well. So it's
Absolutely.
definitely a good connection we have on the show. So thank you to all our viewers who tune into the show both live and then off the air as well. So you can also find our other show, Sports Scramble. You can find that if you have a Twitter account at Sports Scramble 4 and wherever you listen to your podcast. And then also, if you want to check out our sponsor, that will be in the show description as well. And definitely check out the link to our Fanatics sponsor as well. Definitely a big one for them. I know that I use Fanatics every time that, whenever my team wins a, national championship or World Series, I definitely use that as well. So definitely be sure.
Not to stunt our teams, our recent champions.
Oh yeah,
Got the Braves.
I'm not trying to flex or anything, but
No,
yep,
no, we got to.
true. True. All right. So next week we will review Week 4 in the Southeastern Conference. Should be another good week. A couple of conference matchups with Florida, Tennessee, Texas A&M, and Arkansas, and then Vanderbilt, Alabama. So we will see which SEC teams come out on top. And next week we will also look forward to Week 5. We'll start getting to more of the conference play, especially next week in week number 5, as some of those teams start playing each other and beating up on each other, as it always is in the conference. But I hope all of y'all have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you back here at 8 o'clock Central Time, 9 o'clock if you're on the East Coast, on SEC Talk. So enjoy the rest of your week, and have a wonderful weekend as well watching college football.